And then I'll just hit this, and then it'll.
I just want to make sure it's.
We're warming up.
Okay, let's do this back again.
Lexi's warming up her voice.
Okay. Should I hit it off first?
There we go.
Yellow.
Hi.
Okay, so I just won't talk. It's on right now? Okay.
Right. So welcome to our December talk. We're going to talk about healthy living and motion plan. How you take care of yourself. Obviously, it's been a year like none was planned. A year ago at this time, who would have imagined that we would end up this year like we did? So if you go to the Facebook page, we put a piece of paper there. There's some typos, so I apologize. We'll get those maybe cleaned up a little bit. But it's as we do the talk, some things that you can commit to. So for 2021, I want to be better at eating better, thinking better, moving better. It says likely I'm low priority, high priority, so you just check the box. Studies have shown that if you commit to something and you show it to somebody, you're more likely to do it. What would you most like to improve in 2021 related to your health? Sleeping better, exercising better, eating better, the practice of mindfulness, the practice of meditation, read more, develop a healthy hobby, develop a healthy peer group, learn how to cook a healthy way. We talk about sleep, and there's some things. Then on the back, we talk about what food group would you be willing to improve your health by eating less of: wheat, sugar, dairy, processed foods. Scale 1 to 10, I'm fine with my diet. 1 to 10, I need to change my health habits. If you could improve one thing in 2021, what would it be? If you could provide, if we could, as Butch Chiropractic, provide a service for you: exercise, movement education, healthy eating, forming good habits, educations, healthy sleeping habits, healthy emotion habits, and vitamins and minerals. So this is there. You can download it. Again, if you don't commit, so when they look at, and we joke and we laugh, but they did. If you look at the studies, like within 2 weeks of New Year's, 80% of people have already given up on their health plan. We'll talk and give you tools and exercises tonight, so enjoy it. This is a talk, please. We're asking, so if you could watch this talk on Facebook, if you can forward it on to all of your Facebook friends, again, like say things, we'll talk and touch a little bit about it, and I touch the horrible things at first, but we will lose more children to suicide than we will to COVID in the ages of 20 or younger. We'll lose more children this month than we'll lose to all the deaths of COVID in this month. I mean, so again, I think we really have to look and appreciate that. And it's like we had more time this year than we've ever had, and yet the average person gained 15 to 25 pounds depending on the study. 60% of our children became more depressed and more anxiety than they had before. Our domestic abuse absolutely skyrocketed. 60% increase in drug deaths, from overdoses and that. And sit down, and the people we love, our police officers, sit down to a police officer and ask you what their lives have been, not because of people, protesting against police, but the calls they've had to answer in the last 6 months have been horrendous, like horrendous. So we all need to take this serious. So Dr. Aaron is going to start out, and then Dr. Lexi is going to talk next about eating. Dr. Matt's going to talk about motion, and then I'm going to take over the last 2 weeks 20 articles that came out about health and like why we haven't prioritized being healthy during this time, why we prioritize what we take away from ourselves, that we haven't prioritized what we should do. So on that note, Dr. Aaron.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Boach. Kind of a simple tip: if you had mentioned 80% of people give up their goals by week 2 of January, that's when you're supposed to start. So then you're already ahead of 80% of the people. So I'm going to go over actually tonight. It was a book I'd read a couple years ago. In fact, I've read it a couple times, and it's a nice review at the end of the year. There's a couple things as far as goal setting and that. This one's called ULA, and kind of the basically in this book you have two people, and in fact the two guys that wrote it, I got to listen to them talk. Both of them were doing really well in life, successful in their family, successful in their career, and then one of them, his life, kind of did what 2020 did. It went downhill, and the premise of the book is that They call him the Ulu guru and the Ulu seeker. So the guy who's the Ula guru, he's the one who's doing great in all aspects of his life. And the guy who's kind of fallen off the horse, it's his journey throughout the book to try and get back to where he was. So in there, they go through a couple things, and you'll find a lot of things. We remember things in threes: eat well, think well, move well, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, things like that. Well, they go through 7 things. So we'll talk about the 7 F's, and then we'll actually break it out. So in their book, they talk about, and they use the analogy. So if any of you guys have seen circus performers where the guy's spinning plates, so he's got 7 different plates he's got to keep going. So he's got them all on a stick, and he's spinning, 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 spinning. And if you were to compare that to, say, life, maybe you're doing really good that one plate in your field. Maybe you're going to work 80 hours a week and you're doing really good, but you haven't left enough time for your family. Or you're doing really good with your family and your friends and having tons of fun, but what happens as far as your health plate or fitness? Where does that one go? So in their book, there's 7 F's. And I wrote it down to make sure I don't forget any. So there are 7 F's. Number 1 is faith. Kind of an interesting stat. I had looked it up just before I came here. In faith, obviously there are some of those that are people that are more religious than others. I have friends that are agnostic, atheists. But even when you look at religions, guess how many religions there are in the world? 1, 2, hundreds. Yeah, there's actually, if you look at all the different religions, about 80% of them are encompassed in the 12 major religions, but there's actually over 4,000. And I always think of faith, and I was brought up Lutheran, but I always think of faith as there's something bigger than you. If you think you're the utmost, I think you don't tend to live as humble. So faith was their number 1. Then you have your family. Next, you have your field. And after these first 3, they're in no particular order. I always think of Vince Lombardi, the great Packers coach. He said God, family, and the Green Bay Packers in that order. So he was kind of the predecessor to the Ula book. Maybe they got some of their ideas from this. Next, you have fitness. I always like the joke, I'm into fitness whole burger in my mouth. Okay. And I apologize if I ever spell anything wrong. I was a biology major, chemistry minor, and those of us in science sometimes don't spell as well. That's why we tend to scribble so that patients don't know that we can't spell as well. But to complete the list of 7 F's, fitness, finance, friends, and fun, and kind of how I had mentioned earlier. So, let's say for 2020, as Dr. Bouch had mentioned, maybe some of us have put on some weight. So maybe our fitness plate stand up. But since we were at home, in fact, this year it was kind of neat. I checked on my family. We did more FaceTime than we ever have. So that was great. Faith, I read the Bible. I guess I started with Revelations. I thought the world was ending in March. So yeah, that was better. As far as field, I've only taken a couple days off this year. So I thought I've done well in my career. As far as finance, not going out, saving money. As far as friends and fun, if you look at these 2, how often were you able to get together with your friends this year? Definitely one of those things that plate may have slipped off. And depending on what your idea of fun is. I found out my lifestyle is called quarantine because when I get done with work, I like to either read or watch PBS. So my fun probably stayed the same. So we're going to break out, especially in here, from a health standpoint, fitness. And this is where, if you notice throughout the years, a lot of our talks focus in on fitness, and we're talking about overall fitness, not just, because we see some people, you could have a bodybuilder body, but what happens if you have a overweight brain, if that makes any sense. But so we always talk about eat well, think well, move well, and that's what a lot of our talks focus in. Eat well, think well, and move well. So same thing, think of those spinning plates. Maybe this year, you were locked at home more, you were eating more, you weren't moving as much, but maybe you got a chance to read some books. Maybe you were thinking better. And this is always, we always kind of bounce between some of these. For next year, as far as setting goals, that'll be the next thing. I'm just going to show you how I like to set out some of my goals. And actually, they kind of come through this. They call it an ULA wheel. And we actually did this even before this book when we were part of Allied Health. We actually did that. In fact, we kind of rated where our life was like. So I'll actually show you how I set some of my goals for the new year. And I'll speak specifically on from a move standpoint as far as working out. I've done this every single year. I always try to set a quarterly goal. And it's easy for me when I first start out. I like to review my year, how it's gone. So, boy, how many times did I get to the gym? Did I do any races this year? So the only race I was signed up was the Bull Falls 5K. And obviously that got canceled. So I didn't do any races this year. So I'd kind of fallen off this. Eat, I have been eating a little better. And then as I'd mentioned, my thinking had been a little better. So for a quarterly goal, let's say by April 1st, I have a whiteboard in my room. And I apologize if we had a whiteboard, but one of my colleagues forgot to bring it over. So if this shows up a little wrinkly, not to throw anyone under the bus. So by April 1st, as far as going to the gym or working out, so I have some free weights at home, and I mean, how many videos can you watch online as far as YouTube, different things? I mean, it's pretty easy to do a 10-minute workout in the morning. So I usually set, though, each year, by April 1st, how many times do I want to be to the gym? So usually I'll go down to Frank's gym. This year I've been slacking. I've been doing more at-home workouts and walking in the park. I would set something, let's say, pretty simple. 3 times a week for 4 weeks. So 12 times 3 months. Let's say 36 times I want to be to the gym by April 1st. So as Dr. Boach had mentioned, we start the year out and a lot of people drop off. So that first week, I usually start a lot of my goals for the new year the following week after. So let's say I'm in practice, I'm having a busy week, I have lots of patients, I have lots of paperwork, and I just don't feel like working out. If I set a quarterly goal, it's a lot easier for me to achieve that because the next week, instead of working out, if I worked out 0 times the last week, hey, maybe I'll work out 5 times this week. And I would just have on my whiteboard at home, I would just, every time I went to the gym, I would just cross it off. And my goal, if I made it by then, it could be something like I treat myself to a new pair of running shoes, I go to the Texas Roadhouse someday, or as far as getting a new fishing pole for a fishing trip, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be really big, but then I like to reward myself because I think, a lot of goals fail with people because when we start out the new year, hey, I'm going to hit the gym every day, and so they throw everything out of the pantry, everything that tastes good, and they start hitting the gym, and they miss 1 day in 14. And then it's like, oh, I'm a failure. So you succeeded 13 of 14, but kind of like we always tend to think of the negative things. Even in here, if I have a busy day full of patients, I'll think about that one patient who's not getting better, the one patient who's unhappy with my treatment. And we're wired. That's why it's so important as far as trying to think positive, setting goals on that. So that's my fitness goal. How about as far as eating? Okay. So say by April 1st, does anyone have a scale at home? Okay, I haven't owned a scale ever. We have one at work, and I periodically go on it. But for a lot of people, measuring a number like a goal or for weight is pretty easy. So let's say a person's 200 pounds. And if any of you guys have read self-help books by Wayne Dyer is where I got this. He always talks about the I am. So even going back to religion, I am that I am. Be very careful how you talk to yourself. So when you set goals in that, using things like I am, I like present tense. So by April 1st, I am 180 pounds. And I would just, if I had a goal weight for that, I would write it up and I would see it every day. And for a lot of people, if you can have accountability partner, I don't know as far as putting this out. Sometimes people say put it out to the world as far as, on Facebook to have people hold you accountable. I think sometimes if you do set, say, a really big goal, maybe you want to drop 100 pounds, sometimes our family and friends, even though they love us, they sometimes sabotage us. Oh, you can meet us out for more Texas Roadhouse than once a quarter. So with that, if you do have goals in that, for some people it works good to see it every single day where it's in a place, in a room. Other times it's good to see it every day, but keep it private, keep it to yourself until that goal starts to take shape, because sometimes we get sabotaged. So I'm big on the in the now. I weigh this by April 1st. Okay? And guess what happens if I started at 200 and I'm at 190 pounds? Well, I just reset the goal. I think for a lot of people, if I were to ask everyone to raise their hand in a room of 100 people, who would say they've met every goal in their life? No one. And so I think a lot of us are just, that's where I like the phrase, fail early, fail often. So then if I was 190, I would set it for a next quarterly goal. Or maybe I like to do a couple things by April 1st, but then also by, swimsuit season. I guess in Wisconsin sometimes that's July, but usually by Memorial Day, maybe I reset it to that. As far as the positive thinking thoughts, and sometimes I used to think positive thinking, what's the big deal in that? It was one of the last talks that I had given. I think I'd mentioned the stat. How many thoughts a day do we have? Just ballpark. 2 million. That's way off. 2 million for Dr. Lexi thoughts a day. So Dr. Bouch guessed 80, pretty close, 60,000. And of those 60,000 thoughts, they estimate that 80% are negative. And so if you look at that, a lot of times when Dr. Bouch talks about that 7-to-1 ratio, you need 7 positive for every negative. Well, if 80% of our 60,000 thoughts are negative every day, we're just rewiring that pathway to think negative. Funny thing, of those 60,000 thoughts, 95% of them were the same thing that we said the day before. So what fires together, wires together. So I think sometimes even when we talk to ourselves, oftentimes we're our worst critic. Be careful how you use these I am, because a lot of times people say, oh, I'm bad with people, I'm bad with names, I'm bad with leaving it. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. As far as the ULA wheel, the last thing that I want to talk about is the goals. So this is one of the ways, this is what's worked for me, especially my workout goals when I can track those just on a whiteboard. But how about at the end of the year? So I talked a little bit about the ULA wheel, and this is a simple way of how to do it. And this, you could even use a wheel like this, even for your kids, like for certain subjects. For me, I loved math, I loved science, English, not so much. I always think of the King of the Hill line when the son on there, Bobby, was failing English, and his dad, Hank Hill, the propane salesman, was asking him, Bobby, you failed English, you speak English? So English wasn't my forte, but this is an ULA wheel. So you start in the middle here, and then you would draw lines up, say grade it out a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you go 10 this way, and I'm just going to estimate that. Okay, going back to the first chart as far as some of the things that I excelled at. Okay. Boy, my faith in my family. Okay, let's call this faith, my family. Okay. Boy, maybe I did better on these ones. Okay, closer to an 8 out of 10. Okay, but how about my fun? Heaven forbid you posted a picture of yourself having a trip this year. You'd be taken down. So maybe my fun was here. And so maybe for next year, and then after you do that, and same thing. I didn't spend as much time with friends this year. Finance. And 8. So I told you about spelling. Okay. Same there in the middle. And then what you start to do is you connect them. And you see partially, in a perfect scenario, everyone be out here 10 out of 10, life is going well. But different areas of life that you might want to concentrate in on. Now, when it comes to the things we always talk about, eat well, think well, move well, same thing, every year, how's my diet doing this year? How's my gym? How's my thinking? Boy, I've been, and I spend a lot of time reading different nutrition books and that, but when I start getting more angry, more cynical at the world, everything going on, now I got to start reading more things that are going to help me think well. This focus wheel, I like to use this at the end of the year, basically, or even end of the quarter. How did my year go? What new goals can I set for myself, not just in my health, but in those other areas, the 7 areas of life that I had talked about. Those are 2 of the ways that I like to set goals throughout the year. I think it's tough to know where you're going unless you have a final destination. So if you can set that goal, whatever it can be, I know sometimes we talk about setting BHAG goals, big, hairy, audacious goals. If you're 300 pounds and you want to be 180, why not? But if you can set some kind of realistic goal that's specific and measurable, until you write it down, it's much, much tougher to accomplish. So that's my talk on starting out the year as far as goals and that. For our next speaker, I will bring up Dr. Lexi.
So hi guys, I'm Dr. Lexi, and tonight I am going to be talking about my arch nemesis. Not the man in the audience right now, but sugar. So I recently read a book, and this is the main book that I'm going to go off of, and it's a documentary and it's also a sugar film. I got this book from the Dollar Tree. So I'm a big fan of the Dollar Tree. I go there like every week. Matt actually says like if there's one place we're going to cut you off from, it's the Dollar Tree. So I was at the Dollar Tree and I saw this book and I was like, well, it's about sugar, cool. I'll just pick it up. It's $1. I can give it away to a patient or do something cool like that, that kind of thing. And when I started reading it, I was like, holy moly, it's me as a child. Gouda. I can't say his last name, but it's spelled, looks like a game. But and one of the big things he did was he actually did a research study on himself. So this man actually went into the MD, got checked out. His organs were healthy, his blood levels were great. He was a pretty solid, healthy person from what they did testing on. Well, fast forward, he decided to do a study on just like sugar. And Americans on average eat about 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. So if you go and you look, he's got pictures in here and everything. So if you're a big picture person book, it's a good book. But so 40 teaspoons of sugar a day. And what he started doing was he ate that in a healthy diet. So just cubes of sugar, 40 teaspoons, and then along with a healthy diet on top of that. And this guy started seeing detrimental effects. I mean, like, I put it on here too. Well, if I can find his picture now. But essentially, he started seeing that he was gaining weight in his abdomen, which is one of the most unhealthy spots to gain his weight. His cholesterol levels skyrocketed. I mean, he's not a bad-looking guy, but his weight went way up. And then you could even see that it was the same calories as what he was having before. So this is this guy. And that was after 3 weeks of just eating that 40 teaspoons of sugar. So by the end, and this one too. By the end of this study, these guys were actually worried about this guy's life. Like, they were like, holy smokes, like, we don't know if you should keep doing this. He's on the verge of diabetes and all this crazy stuff. So you'll have to look in this book, but this was a really eye-opening book for me. I talk a lot. I work at, or go and practice at Head Start once a week, and I talk to a lot of the parents about like just our sugar consumption and kind of the things that we're doing. And one of the things that we see in our kids is they're getting over 40 teaspoons of sugar. Like, that's being generous, right? And if we look at some of our sodas or orange juices and things like that, we actually see where our sugar is spike, spike, spike. Well, why is this? And why are kids not liking veggies anymore? So I brought my other book from the Dollar Tree, Fruits and Veggies, and this is a whole book of fruits and veggies right here. These are all of our options. I didn't even know some of these existed until I started looking at this book, and I'm like, I've never heard of that before, but I'll definitely try it. So what's happening to our society that we're becoming so sugar driven? So one of the things that happens is I call it the sugar train, or a little roller coaster. And it's a fun game that they have spent millions and millions of dollars on to trick our brains, right? So this roller coaster starts off, and I'm going to use myself as an example, okay? So when I was a kid, you guys have heard this before. What did I love to eat? Ketchup sandwiches with white bread. right? I also loved every night before going to bed, Captain Crunch, slightly soggy, so it cut your lip a little bit when you ate it because it was crunchy enough that if you ate it fast enough, it was like just down through. But that's like 40 grams of sugar right there. So I had like 2 bowls of sugar. And then on top of that, I would sometimes have a bowl of ice cream before bed with the cocoa powder that you go like this over and drizzle it over. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. Well, what was happening to me there? And this is what we see in a lot of our kids. I was starting out, here's my little sugar train. I started eating the sugar and I'm like, whoo, I'm so excited. This is wonderful. Let's go to bed now, right? Well, then as soon as that sugar high, because my brain would get a signal that said, whoo, you just had a little dopamine hit, right? And the thing is that companies have literally done research of giving you the amount of sugar that won't make you sick, but will make you literally want more sugar. So it's a dopamine hit in our brain. So I would hit the sugar high and then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, let's go to bed, right? Or let's relax. But then I would crash and I'd become this angry little child in which like I couldn't pay attention in school and I'd be like, oh, I need that ice cream sandwich again. And then I'd eat that ice cream sandwich and boom, I'm great, I'm behaved, I'm happy. I'm this happy little person right up here. And then that ice cream sandwich would go through my system and I'd be a little devil again, ask my parents. Like really like going through that. So one of the things was that sugar had basically got me addicted to it. So, and it is addicting. So one of the things, like, one, that book had great history on it. There's a lot of, like, I don't want to say politics, but there's a lot behind sugar that, like, is not always to the eye. But also, two, it said a lot of things about how when I'm eating that 40 grams of sugar and I'm getting that enjoyment from it, that I will crave that as soon as it goes down. So one of the big things that you can do or help with that is, like, one, we don't always want to, but we can start decreasing our sugar because as soon as we start having that amount of sugar, our mouth is going to change. So how many kids struggle eating veggies? Do any of your kids struggle with veggies? Sometimes. Dr. Aaron struggles eating veggies sometimes. So when Dr. Aaron has too much sugar, what happens is we start getting that dopamine hit and then we forget, our tongue starts tasting more bitter. So in one of the podcasts I listened to by Terry Walls, she literally describes how we have this sugar hit and our mouth doesn't want to taste veggies anymore. They taste nasty. So these kids are like, ooh, like veggie or broccoli, like that kind of thing. But truly to those kids, because their mouth has turned so sweet, that's what they want. That's kind of what's happening. So it takes an average of 17 times for these kiddos to start like actually liking veggies again. And it might even take longer than that depending how far we've got on that little bit of addiction there. This is my little bit of a maze here. We'll pretend this is a maze. All right. Does that look like a maze? I don't know. We're going to pretend that's a maze. This is like my neurons. This is my 200 million thoughts a second. Well, what happens is I take this little mouse. This is going to be my mouse. Here's this cute little mouse right here, right? And I gave this mouse 2 things, okay? I gave him lots of cocaine, and I gave him lots of sugar. And I let him become addicted to both of those. And then, this research study did this, actually. They took, at the end of this maze, they took sugar, and they took the cocaine. And they said, go, little mouse, go find what you want. Where did that little mouse run to? One of the most addicting drugs in the U.S.? Sugar. So when we start playing games with that, and then we start playing games with some of the stuff like, oh my gosh, have you seen an ugly box of, I don't want to diss Captain Crunch, Flintstones, any of those. Have you ever seen like an ugly box of those that aren't kid friendly? You ever seen anything that's like, oh yeah, by the way, this has 40 grams of sugar per bite? No, we have things on kids' boxes. Paw Patrol is on all the cereal. Paw Patrol, all the fun things that we have are all going on to the things our kids love. So our kids see that and they're like, oh, Paw Patrol. So we're changing our brains in that way. The advertisement is there and the money has been put into there. And there's plenty of money in healthy eating, but when we start getting into it, what do we sometimes gravitate toward? And Dr. B is going to talk about that kind of brain. How do we get it refunctioning so we go through that better stuff? But that's what we'll go for. So a lot of times in my clinic, I always, one of the best things to do is challenge your kiddos to 1 cup of veggies a week, or 1 cup of veggies a day, I would say. Sometimes it might be a week. Like, if you really can't get them to eat veggies, you may have to ease into it. But if you can kind of make a fun challenge and add it Once you start adding those veggies into the diet and start doing things like a little bit healthier of eating, that's where we'll start throwing away a little bit of the sugar, because man, when I eat nutritious stuff, I'm not nearly as hungry for the sugar. But what is the first thing you grab when you're stressed? Yeah. Because it's an addictive thing, I'm like, oh man, I must grab it. And I go into Quick Trip, and you know what? Those guys are good at marketing, because you go in there and you're like, oh man, I'm checking out, and it was a really hard day, and I did this, this, and this. And then what is by the thing? They're Cinnabon rolls. They're little Cinnabon rolls, and I start grabbing them, and I'm like, bruh, 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 bruh. You know, okay, I feel less stressed. But sugar has detrimental, it's not helping us at all. So one of the big things is it's hard to eliminate sugar, but the more you start looking at your labels, the more you start looking at things that you're truly eating. I used to eat like yogurt like it was free. I'm like, this is healthy. I can use as much as I want of it. And then you start looking at the back and you're like, oh, man, I should probably, because sugar has detrimental effects and a lot of forms of it do. So Dr. B is going to hit up with there. I challenge you guys to definitely, for the new year, add one veggie into your diet. Here's a whole book of them right here. If you ever want to borrow this from me or get some ideas, it even has ways to either like grow them, which is one of my goals, or to actually cook them. So get those veggies in, try 1 cup a day, start your kids off with that, start slow, and then that'll make room so that these little highs and lows right here, take them out. All right, thank you for listening, and Dr. Matt is up next.
How's it going today? I'm Dr. Matt. Today I'm just going to cover a couple, super simple little ways we can add motion into our lives. Motion is a huge thing that we need to add into our lives. Unfortunately, most of us have sedentary jobs. I know, here at the office we saw a ton of increases of, that workspace at home. That was supposed to be, a 1 or 2 month solution. We've been working at home for 8, 9, 10 months now. We've been seeing a lot of problems with that. And so here are just a couple really simple solutions to just add little bits of movement in throughout the day. The reason motion is important is, our joints need to be constantly moving. A simple way to think of a joint is the way it gets its nutrition is through fluid moving in and out of a joint. And so, say you have a pond in the middle of a farm field. That pond has no water moving in or out of it. What's it get from the farm field? It gets runoff of pesticides. It gets manure runoff. And what eventually starts happening to that pond if there's no water moving out of it? It becomes polluted. It becomes stagnant. It becomes full of algae. Just not a very healthy looking thing. Nothing's going to survive or grow in there. Well, if we have a spring-fed pond, it can filter that pollution out of it faster. It'll be a healthier, environment for, fish, whatever else. Our joints are very similar. If we're not moving them, we're not cycling that waste out of it, and we're also not bringing nutrition in. That's when we can start getting arthritis. The joints can start breaking down. So the more we can move a joint throughout the day, the healthier it'll be. So a couple simple things is, we're still teaching our class at Frank's Gym every week on Thursdays mornings at 9 a.m. to 9:30. This is kind of the warm-up to that class. Typically, it's a real simple, you can do it in 5-10 minutes. It's a good way to move all the joints. This is a great thing to do in the middle of the day, in the morning when you wake up, while you're watching TV at the end of the day. So just super simple. We start at the ankles. We just do an ankle circle. We try to get that ankle through the whole range of motion. We do 10 to 15 seconds one way, switch directions. You switch ankles. Not only is this good for the joint, but it's also good for the brain. Circles are a complex movement, and so they stress the brain a little bit. We move to the knee. Just do nice, easy circles one way with the knee, opposite direction with that knee. Switch sides. You'll make sure you're doing both sides and then both directions. You can do the same thing with the hips standing. You can stand on the edge of a stair, just let your hip hang, and you can do circles in towards your body, out towards your body. You can do it, go up to the wrist, do nice big wrist circles. You can close and open your fingers while you're doing it. Switch directions. I do these every day on the drive to work. I do elbow circles, switch directions. Make sure you're getting them through the whole range of motion. Same thing, opposite elbow. Next, you can move up to the shoulders. Nice little shoulder circle moving forward. Small shoulder circles going backwards. You can keep on increasing in size, and then you can do a full circle. I like to start where I'm going with my thumb pointing back, and then it's like you're doing a backstroke. You start opening your hand as you go around. This is a great, easy way, safe way to get the joint all the way through its motion. Do both sides. You can add the neck into it, where you're just doing a nice, gentle neck stretch one direction. Nice gentle neck stretch the other direction. You can change the angle wherever you're tight, feel restricted in the neck. Just be nice, gentle, safe with it. Spot we forget about a lot of times is our shoulder blades. Nice big shoulder rolls, moving your shoulder blades as far as you can forward, backwards, and then you'll make sure we're switching directions. And that's a simple way. In 5 minutes there, you moved every joint in your body. You started getting, waking up those joints, getting fluid moving through your body. Another simple thing you can do, and this is, if you're able to use a gym ball at work, or at the time at home, trying to use our free time to relax, but also to take care of our bodies. So if we're watching TV, if we're eating dinner, sitting around talking at home, we can do the gym ball. We're simply just bouncing up and down like this. We're moving fluid in and out of the body. We're also moving lymph throughout our body, trying to cycle things through our body. Bouncing up and down is good. You can add a little side to side bounce to it. We can add a front to back. We're just trying to move our hips and our low back, and then we do circles one way, circles the other way. And if you want to get really crazy, you can do figure eights, and then you can switch your figure eight what way you're going. And those are real simple ways that you can add motion throughout the day. You can start the day with it, do it throughout the day. Another thing that we teach our patients is micro breaks. These are small breaks backwards. I had a patient that asked me, well, don't we want to get our spine, when we bend forward, shouldn't our spine arch as we go forward, and why don't we work on that? And so yes, our spine should be able to curve forward as we go, but in life, most of the time, we're already in this C posture more often than we're in this posture, and so we mainly teach extension exercise in our office. And so we show nice big shoulder roll, pinch your shoulder blades together. You can get your low back into it. We're bringing everything back, neck, look up towards the ceiling. Just hold it for a nice 5-second count. Try to do that 35 times a day. And so it seems like a lot, but that's really only 3 minutes at a time when you break it down. These are real simple things that we can do throughout the day. Try to add them throughout the day. And really, a couple areas that I feel like we can improve the most in our life is at work. That takes a huge chunk of our time, but also in our leisure time. A lot of us, done with work, done with dinner, watch TV. And so TV is a real simple way where we can start adding things in. Good goal would be to every commercial, have a gym ball in your living room, commercials, sit on the gym ball, just bounce up and down. Okay, the next week, do it where during the show, you're on the gym ball. Commercials, if you want, you can sit on the couch. You can grab an exercise band, have an exercise band in your living room during commercials. Do some sort of exercise with the exercise band. A lot of people say they don't know how to use an exercise band. It's hard to do it using an exercise band wrong. You're most likely not going to hurt yourself. Anywhere you're doing something, you're going to be getting some kind of benefit. YouTube, there's tons of videos on YouTube. Just start trying to do slow movement exercises. Start with your TV time and try to build it into other times of your life. And so that's what I have for you today. Dr. Bouch is going to take it from here.
Before I started it, just to kind of review, I love what everybody had to say, and so there's just simple things that, we know that when we take things away from us, we cause scarcity. And so what can you add? So when Lexi talks about adding a vegetable, first start adding vegetables, and then sometimes it becomes easier to take sugar away. I'm going to start, and what I did is, all these articles I'm going to show you are in the last 2 weeks. They were developing that. There's this called Medical Press, so it's Science X. I go through at least 50 medical articles a month that are just brand new coming out there. So Lexi mentioned, study reveals the devastating impact on hidden dangers of type 2 diabetes diagnosed in young adults. Type 2 diabetes is sugar-induced diabetes in that. So we will lose well over 1 million people because of diabetes. So when you think about, we pale the number, so we're going to lose maybe 300,000, which is a lot of people, 350,000 of COVID, but this will kill millions in the U.S., and we never banned sugar. We never banned boxes of sugar. What's the nightmare of nightmares when you shop with a little kid? When you check out, the candy bars are at the checkout stand. I mean, they're not there by accident because kids are going to scream. And when Lexi showed the chart of up and down, do you not think kids train us? So they go in public and they scream and yell, and then we give them something sweet, and then they scream and yell, and we give them something sweet. You go through stores, I mean, it's just a nightmare. And when they walk through the cereal section, so this devastates every aspect of a child's life. And what group is having more diabetes than any other group? Children. And what group? Under 10. That's not that's not genetics. I get so sick and tired when I see a commercial that says, "Oh, Uncle Pete had diabetes, so you're gonna have to." That's not true. Not at all. If we had diabetes at the rate we had when you went back with pre-insulin, it would have been by far the number one killer in the world. I mean, it would have devastated populations in that. There was no diabetes in that. Diabetes hits a lot of the underdeveloped world when we brought sugar in because they never had sugar. So again, we take something, and even sugar cane. I mean, we take molasses out, and then we give it sugar, and again, more addicting than cocaine. So when you see kids that have been addicted to it, and when are they going to most be addicted? 0 to 12. When McDonald's brought Ronald McDonald, they were a struggling franchise, and Ronald McDonald is, other than Santa Claus, is the second most recognized thing by children. Kids go that, and they know the ratio of sugar, salt that helps kids go with it. And it, so Lexi talked about, so sugar is calories, vegetables are nutrients. We have no stop for calories. We crave calories like there's no tomorrow. Nutrients, so if Lexi, when she was a kid and she was naughty and she would have 2 bowls of Captain Crunch, but she would have never had 2 big bowls of broccoli. I mean, she would have said, that's enough, there's a stop. All of us, when it comes to vegetables, so nobody says, oh my gosh, around my menstrual cycle, I just crave broccoli, I can't stand it. I mean, I just eat broccoli and I can't, I mean, I hear it yelling at the neighbor's house, I snuck in one night, I grabbed the broccoli out of the refrigerator. Like, that doesn't happen. But the Snickers bar you hid in the back cupboard, that screams your name. So again, it is so addicting, it's unbelievable in that. So this article, December 14th, 2020, the devastating effects. Have you heard of a national program that says we should address this? I mean, have you heard them banning sugar? Like, say, we're going to ban it. So we've had all kinds of rights, like we put masks, don't go next to people and that. But have we banned any kind of children-related sugars? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. This will kill way more and change way more lives than anything that we can imagine with children in that. Study finds, this is December 14th also, 2020. Study identifies 3 pillars of good mental health for children. We will lose more children because of suicide this month than we'll lose of COVID. By far. I mean, by far. Not even close. And that simple things, they need to move, which we've talked about. They need to eat vegetables. So vegetables is the big thing they need to go with in that. And so moving and that, and then exercise. So they need to exercise, eat vegetables, and they need to thinking and interacting with each other and that. And so it just is a great article on there. It's done by a huge. They need 4.8 servings of raw fruit and vegetables a week, and that's not so much. I mean that's not a ton. We need to have a goal to do this. So mental health is by far, I mean, our children take more drugs for mental illness than any other country in the world, almost all the countries put together. Did we, in this last 6 months, have say, we need to take these 3 pillars and we need to take our health with our children? We had time in school's time. Did we have a national program for this? I mean, it just drives me absolutely crazy that we did not. Teens who participate in extracurricular activities have way less mental illness than that. So this is another study, psychology and psychotherapy, November 2nd, 2020. University of Wisconsin-Madison showed that we had a 55% decrease in athletes in participating in activities, extracurricular activities in that. We had a 60% increase in depression and anxiety just in Wisconsin. I mean, just in Wisconsin, 60%. That was over 60,000 children in that. Did we have a national program to say kids should move? I mean, I talked to, there's a child psychologist, which I really, really like in that, and she says we're losing children at a rate that we've never seen before. She actually got tears in her eyes. Her and I were walking, and we started talking in that, tears in her eyes, and she said the devastation for our kids. So their ULA wheel is absolutely shrunk for so many kids, especially the challenge kids. The World Health Organization said we spent the last 20 years and we got almost 20 million people out of chronic poverty in the world. we just put 50 million more people in chronic poverty. They're going to die from poverty. I mean, chronic poverty is they're going to die from it. 50 million. I mean, that number is so big, it's unbelievable as far as it goes. So she said in Scandinavia, they've allowed their kids to move and go with. Their suicide rates in Scandinavia are way different amongst their children. They understood this group, and when we talked earlier about we wanted kids not to get it so they got older people sick, we're letting the younger people get sick at a rate, like I say, we've never seen before. So kids need to move. And on our whole program, again, mental illness, way higher if we don't move in that. The impact of social media, what have kids filled their time with? Social media, more than ever. I mean, more than ever. You have burned out parents at home, and their kids are going crazy on sugar, and what do you think they're going to let them download on? Social media. Are there some good things that we can do in social media? There's some things, absolutely, in that. But the average kid, the average child before the COVID was spending 8 times on some kind of electronic device. Now it's 12. Every hour a kid's on an electronic device is a negative for their mental health in that. No question about it. So you see the executives from Google, you see the executives from Facebook talk about that. They calculated how many seconds it was. Lexi mentioned dopamine. Dopamine is the addictor. Dopamine is what causes the worst things in society, the worst addictions. Somebody will spend all of their family's money gambling because they get adopted with dopamine. They know they can get dopamine. They know to the fraction of a second how much delay there needs to be in everything on Facebook, everything on Google, everything on to addict kids to it. Their brains are the most addicting. Did we see any ban on that? Like anything to say we should not do that? And again, so we know that. I mean, study after study on that. And this one just drives me crazy. Did we ban liquid flavors in e-cigarettes? And who were they targeting? Our children? If you remember, we had 9 deaths in Wisconsin pre-COVID just from kids taking e-cigarettes. You talk to any teacher, what do they say? The biggest problem they have right now is e-cigarettes. They make little things that look like flash drives so they can smoke e-cigarettes with candy. Like, if we're really concerned about kids' health, wouldn't we have banned these? Like, why would you allow it at all? And I know there's been some movements in some states that ban some of those, but this is killing kids. Is there any need to have e-cigarettes? No, I mean none, and especially for kids. And again, that they bring them into the schools and that. So again, I just think that we have to go. Stress-induced leads to learning and memory difficulties, increased anxiety in children. 60,000 kids in Wisconsin alone had increased stress and anxiety because of what's going on with COVID and that. It decreases their memory. She goes out to the schools and tries to help. She says more and more kids are just dropping. They're not even showing up in school anymore. Not showing up at all. Not checking in, not anything. If I remember right, and I could be off on a number, but in Minneapolis, they said, I think it was 80% of kids in junior high have at least one F in a class now. Like, it's catching up to us in that. And so we had a national program say, we need to get kids socialized, we need to get walking, we need to get... No. We have a movement to say, don't go outside, don't move, don't go to a gym, don't do anything. 55% increase in alcohol consumption just in Wisconsin. And do you think that was like all the way across the board, or do you think the most challenged families had the highest alcohol consumption? We left stores that sold alcohol open when we closed gyms in Wisconsin. It just makes no sense to me. How can we think that's okay when we did that? I'm not saying that we want to close any business, but how do we just decide we close one and not the other? 55% increase in alcohol in Wisconsin consumption as far as it goes. Young people that go to bed later smoke and drink more. Study, cool study on that. It's out of Addiction, and these are all peer-reviewed journals. So this was a December 14th again study on that. So what do you know? What was the biggest thing when kids when they first started school? None of them went to bed at night. They went to bed at 3, 4, 5 in the morning and got up for part of the day and went to bed, and they increased their drinking and smoking. I mean, we know cigarettes kill way more in this country, like way more. I mean, cigarettes and secondhand smoke. I don't understand. If we're really concerned about health, why would we not ban anybody smoking with a child in a car under the age of 18? If it's really health we're worried about, wouldn't we do something about this? And we know again, so kids drinking and smoking more, what does that lead to? Absolutely, health, absolute crisis as far as what goes on. So this is I brought this for two reasons in that. So cytoplasm is what the vaccine puts its marker in cytoplasm. Cytoplasm gets congested in people that are diabetic, obese, overweight, underactive, and so we know we have congestion. So what this does then, when a cytoplasm, it disrupts sleep cycles. So your whole circadian rhythm, every cell in your body has its own circadian rhythm. And so if you ever go to sleep at night and you say, man, my legs don't want to sleep, but my brain does, because you're off. I mean, it's not working. We have to move and eat right to get every cell in our body to say safe at the same time. But if my brain is tired, but my body thinks the polar bear is next to me, my legs will be ready to run all night long, and I'll get restless legs and all kinds of craziness going on. So again, when I do not take care of myself, the cytoplasm gets congested, and we have issues with it. And again, this is where the vaccine is put into the cytoplasm right now. Like I just think like we need to be so careful because it affects everything. And if we affect sleep cycles, what did you just see? People drink more and eat more. What do we know if we affect sleep cycles? They have more anxiety and more depression. I mean, we already take 80% of the world's antidepressants. I mean, like, where are we going to drive this thing in that? So again, it just seems crazy as far as it goes. Again, I'm going to run through and just part your hair on these. We look at, so, you know, one of the things that I laughed a little bit, and not laugh like ha-ha laughing at, but when I have so many young people under the age of 20 and they put their glasses down in my office, they can't see where their glasses are. Like, how did eyes get bad so fast? Like, I mean, honestly, if 300 years ago people had eyes like they are, who would have known who to hit who in the head when they're fighting each other? Like, they would have been bopping friends. Like, nobody would have been knowing who they hit anymore. They wouldn't have been able to find their cabin or their teepee. I mean, everyone would be like cohabitating because they go to the wrong tent every night. I mean, it'd be crazy stuff would have been going on in that. So again, we need the enzymes in our body, and when we get stressed, we can't get the nutrition out of our vegetables that we need to have in that. So we need the enzymes in that. Probably more and more that I look at, I think almost everybody needs a digestive enzyme right now because they can't digest their food even if they take good vitamins. My sickest people are taking the most vitamins, but they're not digesting. And so if we don't have enzymes, we can't pull it out. So why did I put carrots up in eyes? Because without beta carotene, your eyes can't heal because it goes in there. If you eat a carrot and you cut your eye, and they put, so, you know, poor animals in that, so they put radioactive carotene, they injure an animal's eye, and then they measure, more of that carotene ends up in the eye than anywhere else. Our body is so amazing. It's like so crazy amazing as far as it goes. And so, but without the enzymes, we can't get the beta carotene out. I don't think it's an accident that we can't see. I mean, that people can't see whatsoever. It's like crazy, unbelievable. So avoiding inflammatory foods lowers heart disease and stroke risk in that. Again, massively in that. So have we heard that we should decrease inflammatory foods? I mean, and this was, and I don't mean to get political or anything to this, but I had somebody come in and tell me the other day that they yelled at somebody for not having a mask on. And I said, but in that grocery store, did you yell at somebody for having inflammatory foods? Did you yell at the people that were out in front smoking? I mean, like, why did you yell at only the people that didn't have a mask on? Like, isn't this affecting everybody? Isn't this the reason people can't go out? When people aren't taking care of themselves, isn't that a reason that the rest of us can't? That our children are locked up, that they're committing suicide at a rate they never have? And we know it's simple, just more vegetables. So who are we going to yell at? Like, what are we going to get upset about and mad about? Should we not be trying to promote this? And these are all within the last 2 weeks. New free resource launched to help children eat more vegetables. You know, this made USA Today, all the major newspapers, not. I mean, so we put something out there and we said it. Did we cover that at all? No. We tell everybody about what they shouldn't do, but this is one of the great resources out there as far as it goes. And so removing the hidden nasty from our foods could save thousands of people. This is trans fats in that. So not only do kids' foods are filled with absolutely sugar, but trans fats, that's why I can take a Twinkie and I can put it on a counter for like 6 years and it never goes bad because of trans fats. So when I put a trans fat, the only reason for them is they make bad food last forever. You know, there was one of the apocalyptic movies not so long ago, and I laughed. So the guy meets girl. Of course, there has to be a love story in any tragic movie in that. And he saves this guy from some bad thing going on, and he has nothing to eat. So he's sitting there looking bad, and she pulls out of her backpack, it's Twinkies. And he looks at the date and he says, these are 1,000 years old. And she goes, yes, the ancients could make food that never rotted. And so, I mean, we make fun about it. We laugh about it a little bit. I used to go, there was a nutrition guy that I followed, would go to seminars. For 15 years, I went to classes. For 15 years, he brought the same Twinkie. He put it on the counter, and everybody could touch it, and it was spongy. I mean, never got bad. And that, when the Super Size Me came out, people started saying, yeah, I found my McDonald's cheeseburger in my grandpa's taco box. It's been there for 10 years, never looked different. I mean, like way crazy bad stuff as far as it goes. So trans fats are put in foods to make them last forever. But what did the FDA say? What's the safe level of trans fats that would not cause cancer? Zero. None. Zero. There are zero. But did we ban trans fats? No, because we have to have junk food on the counter for years and years that we feed kids that just tear them apart. Are high-protein total diet replacements the key to maintaining healthy weight? Answer is no. I mean, we need healthy vegetables. So when you, especially kids, be so careful. If they eat too much protein, it loads their kidneys up. I mean, if it's being a little cynical, but not cynical. If you talk to investors and they look at down the line what you should be investing in, it's dialysis centers. Because we're just destroying kidneys, I mean, with all the stuff we put in. So if you were going to invest a dialysis center in that, so we want to be really careful with that. New research on omega-3s, I mean, it's just, again, drives me crazy in that. You will still say people that omega-3s don't help people in that. And then you heard all kinds of, study after study. Omega-3s are great. If kids and depression kids, there's a book called The Megazone, but if we got something good in our kids, it's that. So we're still promoting horrible stuff. You walk through a grocery store and you see young moms, and man, they have, I mean, they're just shopping the survival in that. I'm going to go, this is kind of my COVID little run real quick as far as it goes. Did you see this in USA Today? Big study on melatonin helps prevent COVID. Because with melatonin, your immune system reacts better, and so you don't get as sick in that. So melatonin is a natural thing produced by your brain that helps you sleep better in that. It's a study, absolutely. So research identifies melatonin as a possible COVID-19 preventer, helps people in that. November 9th, 2020. Again, did this make national news? Like, no, not at all. Like, why wouldn't it? Like, if we came up with something natural, like vitamin D, which I'll talk in a second, wouldn't you want to say, yeah, like, we would want the nation to do this? Melatonin, so people aren't sleeping, and we know the rest is not sleeping. This helps you sleep at night. You know, when you, like, have a plan to sleep, you stop watching TV 2 hours before you go to bed. So your body was used to melatonin getting higher and higher. It makes you tired. Cortisol goes down and down. And for any of you that wake up at 2 in the morning, it's because your melatonin levels are too low and your cortisol levels, so it crosses over. So from 2 to 4 in the morning, you wake up and you can't sleep. And then at 4 in the morning, you go to sleep and the alarm goes off at 6 and it was the best sleep that 2 hours. It's because our melatonin levels. Good research paper on this just came out, and again, these are all, you know, these are journals that are they're called peer review. These are the best research in the world. So again, melatonin. Do we hear it? The role of sun spread in respiratory diseases? Isn't COVID a respiratory disease? Have we talked at all? Because why would we see outbreaks all over the world when sun goes away? Hundreds of years we've seen it. Because when sun decreases, we just stop getting vitamin D. And vitamin D levels affect us drastically. And in the summers now, when everybody's putting sunscreens on and not getting the sun, and we went through the worst summer ever. Did people get outside less? Like lots of people did. They stayed inside, and when people that are staying inside, not getting sun, when they get sick, they get sicker, way sicker, because we don't get it. So again, did anybody say about this? Did anybody? I mean, any way of saying that we should do this and that? That was important. No, we took everybody and said, no, don't social distance on the beach. We're going to close all the beaches. We're going to close all the parks. You go by in the heart of this. What did they do to every playground at a school? They put yellow tape around it. They banned people from getting outside and going to parks. They closed a lot of the parks and that. How our immune system remembers virus. This is probably the biggest one, which and again, I don't mean to get political on that, but where in the world do we come up that when you get COVID, you can get it in 3 months again? Like you can get it again. And if you get it, it's going to be worse. There is no research anywhere at all. They say, I'm the nurse. I read at least 20 COVID studies every week, and there is no research. 3 national forums that I belong to, I asked, where did it come from every 3 months? Do your antibodies drop at 3 months? Absolutely. But it's your T cells that have a memory that protects you. And that protects you for a lifetime. Because coronaviruses are colds. You don't get the same one again. We know that. Flu, don't we have a different strain every year? I mean, don't you give a different vaccine? They don't make the same vaccine and you get like, oh, wow, we got it, so we give the same vaccine for 20 years. It's a different vaccine every year because it doesn't happen. So to say that in 3 months, because again, not to say, to tell somebody, you still got to wear a mask, you still got to do nothing, you still got to not go to gym, don't socialize, don't be friends, don't do anything after you've had it. I mean, that's just the way we're wrong approaching that. So the T cells form earlier than previously thought. So they're the memory. That's the key. There's a new, instead of an antibody test, there's a T cell memory test that came out recently. I didn't bring the study, but that's the big gun. That's what we should be testing is the T cells, because antibodies go away after 3 months and that. They always do. Our body says, I can't keep my antibodies up forever because if not, I'm going to attack myself. Another one, vitamin D linked to IQ with children. I mean, we have more learning disabilities than we've ever seen in school. Like, was this another USA Today on the news? Like, whoa, wait, like this is the coolest thing ever? We're going to have kids because we have. So let's have all kinds of things that say, yeah, let's advertise Ritalin. Let's advertise depressive drugs for kids. Let's advertise. But again, vitamin D in pregnancy. And then when you have kids, multiple kids close together, way important to get vitamin D back up as far as the levels in that. Vitamin B7 may reduce the development of advanced cancer. Like, is there a problem with vitamin D? Like why aren't we promoted? Everybody in the world, 7 major studies came out that said vitamin D is the biggest gun against coronavirus. What's the biggest gun against everything? I mean, everything. So we're seeing cancer rates go up in our country in children. Our children get the least amount of sunshine. I mean, I laughed. I mean, and again, not one of those ha-ha laughs on that, but there were only 4 or 5 kids this summer that came in that had tans. Like, nobody had tans. Like, none of my little kids had tans as far as it goes. Again, we need to make sure, again, vitamin D studies. New study warns stress experienced by pregnant women during COVID pandemic are going to affect the emotional stability of their children for the rest of their life. A stressed mom has unstable kids that almost can't be treated the rest of their life in that. Did we say anything? Did we come up with a plan for expectant moms? I mean, again, what's going to happen to our children down the line after this without a plan? 1 in 10 in parents experience severe burnout and lockdown study finds. Like, did we come up with a plan for parents? Did we come up with some kind of, I mean, again, these things, when parents are burned out, their kids burn out. Diabetes, hypertension may increase risk of COVID-19 brain complications. You know, when we talk about these crazy complications with COVID, do we say that it's only in a small percentage? It's only in populations at risk? No. We act like everybody can get this brain thing. It's a really small part of the population that has hypertension, that has it. Again, ACE drugs, which are for hypertension, did we warn people? The study showed almost right away that it affects the receptor where COVID attacks. And so if you're on a hypertensive drug, it way affects you, and COVID can be way worse for you. We didn't talk about that at all. I mean, again, why were we so selective as far as our articles go? Again, not too much longer we're going to go with. And I laughed. So I've become a big proponent, and I've looked at stem cell research in that. So stem cells are like the big thing. So stem cells are undifferentiated cells. So they're cells in my body that help me repair cells. They help me take care of myself. As we get older, we get less stem cells. Great research on it, but it's being blocked at the legislative levels, and they come up with things like stem cells could cause cancer. No. Study says not at all, nothing at all. So again, how do we have companies coming and fighting stem cell research for that regular people can have it? And then they come up with articles that aren't true in that. Unexpected discovery leads to better understanding of migraines in that. So this one, which again drives me crazy as far as it goes. So when we take glutamine, and so they talk about, we get a huge bloom of glutamine in the brain, which is a neurotransmitter, before we get a migraine. So does glutamine sound at all like monosodium glutamate? Glutamate is what glutamate is. It's a neurotransmitter. So we've laughed a little bit. We used to talk about Chinese food headaches because they have lots of MSG in. MSG is, so when somebody goes and has migraines and that, is anybody talking to them about reducing their MSG? Are we not saying we should reduce MSG? And one of the, maybe one of the funny things at all is that We do not allow MSG in baby food, but we allow it in kids' food. But we do allow MSG in vaccines, which is just the craziest thing ever to me as far as it goes. So monosodium glutamate is a neurotransmitter, and we should not let, I mean, it's a flavor enhancer, so can bad food make it taste good. So a kid that goes to play hockey, that absolute of each food that's filled with monosodium glutamate, so my chips, all that stuff, flavor enhancers, cheap food with monosodium glutamate, and then they get an elbow to the head in hockey, and they have brain damage like we've never seen before. Like, this is one of the cascades that make brains just go crazy in that. Again, lots of great studies on that. I just got couple of real quick ones yet. So there is more and more studies on the gut that are just absolutely, so when we treat depression, how do we treat it? We give it a serotonin uptake inhibitor. 60% of all your serotonin comes from your stomach. 20% comes from your other body. 20% is in your brain. And all our therapy is toward brain serotonin and not gut serotonin. I mean, we need to really think about the microbes. And I could have probably put 100 studies in the last year just on the gut microbe and that. So again, when we look at follow the gut, this is a cool one too. Kids that are raised in farms have less asthma because they're exposed to more things in the nature, and so their body responds well. What are we doing with kids right now? Are we exposing them more to nature, or are we exposing them less? I mean, you wait the asthma that we see that explodes from this. So again, cool study. So did that come out? Any were saying, yeah, get your kids outside, get them walking around. There's actually a really cool study that just came out. From 1 to 3, your kids, when they see certain patterns, and I can't remember the name of the pattern, but when you walk in the woods, that's what the pattern of the woods are, and it develops their brain in a way that keeps them calm and less likely to be mean. Study in mice demonstrates how gut bacteria helps ward off viruses to make animals resist infections. I mean, wouldn't it have been nice to talk about that we should take better care of our gut? So when we eat foods, I mean, take a box of, and I'll probably get yelled at because I've got yelled at before, but I'm just going to use a brand, something like Hamburger Helper, and read the ingredients in it. I was the opposite of him. I was a chemistry major, biology minor in that. I can't tell you the chemicals in Hamburger Helper. I mean, there's at least 15 chemicals I don't know. They all kill your microbiome. So what did people start doing? Eating foods that were worse for the microbiome. This is one of the biggest fighters of virus. I mean, one of the biggest things that will help you. Link between Alzheimer's disease and gut microbiome. One of the most devastating diseases we have is Alzheimer's. What's the other thing you should invest in if you talk to an investor? Kidney dialysis centers and centers for senile dementias and that. The average person to die costs $100,000 a year. The average person with senile dementias or any of the brain dysfunctions take 10 years to die. It's $1 million a person to die. You just saw me show diet, we said things in that. So this is my last stack, I promise. Living near green space is linked to lower rates of smoking and higher chances of quitting. So if we have green spaces and that, even if you're in a city and there's a green space and you can see it out your window, your health improves like 20 to 30% as far as life expectancy. Did our kids get more exposure to green spaces or less? Less, like way less, like crazy less than that. Like, how do we put bans around parks and not let kids in them? Like, they're the lowest risk kids. I mean, like, they're like 0 to 4. The last article I read, so I mean, someone told me, oh, I heard a 6-month-old died in the U.S. No, that was not true. There were 2 baby deaths. No kids have died 0 to 4. Yet we don't let them go outside. Under the age of 19, it was like 3 months ago. The study said there was only 1 confirmed without some other health condition, 1 death of a healthy child under the age of 19, and we banned them from doing everything. I mean, like there's way more flu deaths than that. Dallas Heart Study yields new insight about depression. So they were doing a huge study on heart disease in inflammatory foods, and what did they find? Inflammatory foods are one of the biggest markers for depression. What are our kids suffering from? And if you look at foods that are made for kids, aren't they horrible? Like Lexi was so right. I mean, so like she brought that book back. I'm like, can we buy 100 of those? Because we need to like give those out for every contest we have here, coloring contest, whatever. And that again, we need to get away from that. So again, biggest study out there. Singing to preterm infants during reduces mental anxiety and supports the mother and infant relationship. Like, I just hate the sterileness and that. So preterm babies, we need to sing to them. Like, it's good for everybody. The power of validation, and this is, I'm going to use this as my last one, just one set. Mindfulness meditation may decrease the impact of migraines. How many people are going for migraines get any kind of help as far as eating or mindfulness or not eating MSG or not eating neurotransmitters? Aren't we prescribed something? And we don't have a shortage in our brain of that. And this is probably the last one in that. And I truly, truly want us to all, 2021, be kind to each other. We need to validate each other in that. It's just, nothing makes me more sad. And when I was talking to our psychologist today at the store and saw her, and she started crying and I started crying, I have never seen families get tore apart. Because if somebody thinks people should get together or somebody thinks somebody shouldn't get together, they scream and yell at each other and they say, you're going to kill mom and dad. I have so many old people that are so sad right now because they've been protected for 6 months and not got a chance to hold their children or their grandchildren as far as it goes. We have, if I can get this going again. This is one of the coolest pictures ever. Oxytocin is what makes us love each other. So much makes us care about each other. It makes us see what's right in people, not what's wrong in people. This is the first ever where we see a mom kissing a baby, and these are oxytocin receptors. When moms and grandparents and people kiss babies and hold babies, their brain changes for the rest of their life. They become more kind, more nice, more whatever. And did we not stop this more than ever? Can you imagine the kids that have not been held by grandparents, have not been talked? And again, and those kids have no risk. I mean, they have no risk at all. And the grandparents, need to have a choice because it's not lighting their brains up either. And we're seeing breakdown in that. So the power of validation, helping people stay positive in that. Honestly, if we for 6 months on social media, 2 people in the store, we could not say something bad? Do you honestly think when you scream and yell at people, you call them stupid on social media, that they're going to get better? That just improves them, the world gets better? If we want to be great healers and great changers of the world, we have to learn to unconditionally love ourselves so we can unconditionally love the world. There would be nothing that would change the world more than we could if we unconditionally loved ourselves. It would be the greatest healer, the greatest thing we could do to anybody as far as it goes. But as we haven't taken care of ourselves, Dr. Aaron, apologized 2 or 3 times. You heard me apologize. I know somebody might get mad about it. But why would somebody get mad about anything that any of us say? Why do we get mad about that? I don't care if it's politics. I don't care if it's eating. I don't care if it's anything. We need to validate with kindness what we like about people more than we ever have. So I'm going to ask you, and again, just quick go through this. Just take this if you need any help. Take this sheet. It's on our Facebook page. Just download it and then go through it. Come up with a health plan as far as you know. If we can help anything, I think what Dr. Aaron had to say tonight, Dr. Lexi had to say, Dr. Matt had to say was important for the world. If you could take this on your Facebook page and you could forward it to all your friends, we'd love to have this talk get all over. We had a couple of these talks get to well over 5,000 people. It's a way to make a difference. It's our way to make a difference. It's why we're here late at night trying to do this and why we get ready for the talk is we want as many people to hear this as possible because we are not from the outside in. We aren't going to save by science if we don't try to save ourselves. If we're healthy people, science works way better. If we're unhealthy people, all the science in the world isn't going to help us. If we're sick to a certain point, all the science in the world isn't going to help us. Science works best when we are our best in that. And so, again, take care of ourselves. Do the best you can. Please download this and that. In January, we're going to follow up with this talk. We're going to talk about the little things that we can do. We will have this the 3rd Tuesday of every month all the way through next year and that. That's our giving back to community. If somebody wants a virtual talk or they want something for a group, absolutely get a hold of us. We'd be glad to do a Zoom meeting. Jen's been good. She's taught us all almost now. We can do Zoom meetings. We're pretty good. We have an account. You can use our Zoom account. We can set up for you in that. But again, we in 2001 are going to be the best we can be so we can help you the best that you can be. And that. So again, truly reach out to us. So thank you tonight.